Well, let me welcome you to Road to the White House, offered by Pace University as a massive open online course. I'm Professor David Caputo of the Political Science Department at Pace University. And today I want to talk about an interesting topic, and that is Donald Trump's attempt to get to the number of delegates that he needs for a first ballot victory in the Republican nomination. I'll talk about the Sanders-Clinton race in the next lecture. But for a moment, let's consider the background of this. It is now late March, early April, and we have a little bit of a hiatus in terms of the number of primaries. The next important one will be on April 5th in Wisconsin, and that will be a very important primary, and have more to say about that in just a minute. But where do we stand at this point? Okay, and I think that's interesting. You may want to write down some of these numbers, because as I do some of the math associated with it, it might be easier for you to have the numbers actually in front of you, or come back and pick this up as we do it. Okay, first of all, you need to know that there's going to be 2,472 delegates to the Republican convention. Remember, you need a majority of those delegates, so that's 1,237 delegates in order to have a first ballot victory. What's a first ballot victory? It means after the convention gets started, they'll place names in nomination, then they'll call for roll call, and people will, the delegates will, by state, will indicate their preferences based on what's happened in the primaries and caucuses and so forth. And that vote is tabulated at the end of the first ballot. 2,472 votes would have been cast, and if any of the candidates ends up with 1,237, they in fact are the nominee. Okay, so remember 1,237. Okay. So the question has been in recent weeks, is Donald Trump on path to get to 1,237? Or is he going to come short of that? And we'll talk about the implications of that in just a minute. So let's do the math. Okay, currently, at this point in time, 1,528 delegates have been chosen. Okay, 1,528 delegates have been chosen. That then means that you have a total left, okay, of 944 delegates yet to be chosen. Okay. Now these numbers are from Bloomberg wire service, and they're based through the March 24th. They showed Donald Trump with 739 delegates, Cruz with 465, Kasich with 143, and all the other candidates who have subsequently dropped out have a total of 181. So if you sum those four together, you'll get 1,528. Now, so of all the delegates selected, okay, 1,528, Trump has 739. So divide 739 by 1,528, and you'll see that Trump has been getting 48% of the delegates. Okay? Now, if he gets 48% of the remaining delegates, okay, he's going to end up with a number of 1,192. 1,192. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it means that he'll be short of the number that he needs, the 1,237 that he needs. Now, I'll talk about how he might be able to make that up in just a moment. But if he just does as well from this point on, he'll be short. If he doesn't do as well, in other words, he carries a lesser percentage, say 40%, 42%, he would then, of the delegates, he would then be even further away. Okay. But I want to show you something that I think is interesting and really hasn't been talked about much. Total, the Trump vote, the Trump delegates, 739, and the Cruz delegates, 465, and the Kasich delegates of 143. Okay, that's going to, if you look at that way and take Trump's percentage of that, when there's only 3 candidates, when you take away the others, he's getting approximately 55%. Okay, he's getting approximately 55%. If you were to get 55% of the remaining 944, where does that put him? It puts him at 1,258. So now he's 21 delegates over what he needs. So it's fine to look at what's happened, But going ahead with only 3 people in, is it possible for Trump to get 55%? I think it is. Okay? I think it's also possible that he might end up only getting 50, 51%. But that is more than the 48% that he's had throughout the whole field. So we just don't know what's going to happen. Except I take a little bit of a different posture from most people in that I think there's an excellent chance that he's going to get his 1,237 going into the convention. Now, even if he doesn't get it as a result of the actual caucuses and primaries, and the caucuses are largely behind us now, so we're dealing only with primary elections, there's another source of delegates for him. And that is, remember, I told you that there were 181 delegates that have been won by candidates who dropped out. So for instance, Marco Rubio has 166 delegates no longer pledged to him. Ben Carson has 8. Bush had 4. Fiorina had 1. Huckabee had 1. Paul had 1. So that's how you get to 181. Let's say that Trump is at 1192. The first scenario that I gave you, that he runs at 48% as he had in the past. What does that mean? Well, it means that Trump has the possibility of making up the 35 other votes he needs by getting them from only 20% of these other delegates. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, none of the Rubio delegates would vote for Trump. And I would say, hold on. These delegates are going to have a lot of pressure being told that, hey, you're in position to decide who the presidential nominee is going to be, or do something for me and I'll do something for you. Okay, there's also another way that Trump can get to his 1,237, and that is to simply say to either Cruz, which I think is less likely given what appears to be very strong personal and antagonism between the two, but especially to Kasich to say, look, you're my vice president if you swing your delegates to me. Kasich has 143. He drops out, convinces his delegates to support Trump. Trump is over the hump in terms of the numbers that he needs and gets the nomination. So now what happens if he doesn't get the nomination in terms of the first ballot? Then it gets much more complicated, and here I would recommend that you go to C-SPAN, to their Road to the White House coverage, and watch the interview that they did 2 days ago with Benjamin Ginsburg, who used to be the chief counsel for the Republican National Committee. Ginsburg explains the difference between temporary and permanent rules, difference between party rules and convention rules. I'll have more to say about that if by the time the semester is over, it looks as if we're going to go to a contested election. It's a whole different process. But I think there's still possibility for Donald Trump to get the numbers.